All right, so let's dive in today. We're going to be looking at some interesting stories about what's happening here in the U.S.
Yeah, these two stories we have, they really seem to clash.
Yeah, you got folks talking about like a mass exodus from blue states.
Yeah.
Like everybody's running away because of politics.
Right, and they even have a name for them. It's Donald Dashers. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Donald Dashers. Okay.
Yeah, and they're saying they're afraid of Trump's policies, if he makes a comeback and all. And they're pointing to these numbers like over 6,000 Americans trying to become British citizens. Can you believe that?
6,000. Wow, that's a lot of people. I mean,
It is. It's definitely something to think about, right?
yeah, and then you look at the actual data, and it does seem like states like California and New York, they are losing people while places like Texas and Florida are gaining. So there's definitely some movement happening there.
For sure. But the question is it really all about politics,
But that's what we're here to figure out, right?
Exactly. So let's look at the economics for a second.
Okay, yeah, because when you start looking at the jobs picture, it's interesting.
Right. Employment growth in those blue states, California, New York, it's not keeping up with places like Texas. So maybe it's not just red versus blue. Maybe it's about opportunity.
Yeah, and it's funny because we've all seen those polls, right? Trump's approval ratings have been pretty good. So if people are really running scared, wouldn't you think those numbers would be a lot lower?
Yeah, it's a good point. It does make you wonder, are these Donald Dashers a sign of some huge trend, or are they just a really vocal minority?
Yeah, a small but loud group, maybe.
Could be.
Okay, so we've got this one story about people possibly leaving blue states for a bunch of different reasons. But then there's this other story about small businesses, and it seems like they're getting hit from all sides.
Yeah, it's been rough. The pandemic obviously threw everything for a loop, and we're still dealing with the fallout.
Right. Supply chains are a mess. Inflation is through the roof.
It's been a perfect storm. And then you layer on top of that this argument that the Biden administration has added trillions of dollars in new regulations.
Trillions with a T.
Yeah, that's a lot for any business to handle, let alone a small business.
Yeah, and sometimes those policies that sound good on paper, like tariffs, they can actually end up hurting the little guy more.
Absolutely. Small businesses often don't have the same kind of cushion to absorb those extra costs that bigger companies do.
Right. So are we seeing a connection here between these economic pressures on Main Street and this whole microwave oven thing we were talking about earlier? Could they be feeding into each other?
It's certainly possible when you look at the big picture, businesses struggling, jobs disappearing, people got to go where they can find work. It's not always about ideology. Sometimes it's just about survival.
And it's not just the business owners themselves,
Right.
right? The article we looked at talked about how all this affects people's 401ks too.
Oh, yeah. Definitely when those values go down, people have less money to spend, and that hurts everyone.
It's a domino effect.
It is. Small businesses are the engine of our economy when they struggle. Everybody feels it.
So we've got these two stories, one about political anxieties and people moving to the other,
Yeah.
about small businesses fighting to stay afloat. But are they really two separate stories?
That's the big question. Are we seeing the whole picture here, or are there pieces missing? Are these just temporary blips, or are they signs of something much bigger happening in our country, in our economy?
Feels like we're looking at two sides of the same coin. But is it just a coin toss, or is there something more complicated going on, something we need to unpack a bit more?
I think there's definitely more to it.
All right, well, let's keep digging then.
Sounds good to me. What's crazy to me is how both these stories, they both tap into this sense of unease. Like something just isn't quite right.
Right, it's like this feeling of being on edge, like he said something's not right. And on one hand, you have people so put off by the political climate that they're literally packing up and leaving the country.
And then on the other hand, you have these small business owners, the backbone of America, really feeling the squeeze.
Yeah, feeling the squeeze from policies, from just this overall feeling of uncertainty.
And they're the ones who are on the front lines, the ones who really feel the effects of these regulations and economic shifts.
It's true, and it's easy to forget that we're not just talking about numbers on a spreadsheet here. We're talking about real people.
Absolutely.
Families trying to figure out where to live. Business owners struggling to make ends meet.
Everyday Americans trying to navigate a world that just feels like it's spinning out of control.
And that's what's so powerful about these stories, right? Whether they're about folks moving or businesses struggling, they all highlight this bigger picture of a country trying to figure things out.
Searching for answers.
Exactly. And those answers, they're not always easy to find.
Definitely not. There's no easy fix for these complex issues,
No magic wand.
Right, but by at least understanding the different sides of the story, by seeing how everything connects, we can start having more productive conversations about how to move forward.
So where do we go from here? We've looked at these two narratives, but
Yeah.
are we any closer to understanding what's really going on?
Well, I think we've made a good start. We've gone beyond just the surface level, beyond the political talking points or the economic doom and gloom, and we've started to see the nuances, the things that often get missed.
But it feels like we're just scratching the surface. Like, what are the long-term consequences?
Yeah.
If all this keeps going, what if more and more people leave those blue states? What if small businesses keep getting hit? What happens then?
Honestly, those are the questions that keep me up at night.
Me too.
Because the potential consequences are huge. I mean, we could see the political divide growing even wider, the gap between the rich and the poor getting bigger, and people losing faith in our institutions.
It's scary to think about.
It is. It really is. And it feels like we're at this crossroads. The choices we make now, both individually and as a country, they're going to have a ripple effect for years to come.
So which path do we choose?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
I don't know about you, but it can feel kind of overwhelming sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like all these huge, complicated issues.
Right.
It's tough to even know where to begin.
Right. It's easy to feel like you're drowning in it all.
Totally. But I think that's exactly why it's so important to have these conversations,
To dig a little deeper.
Yeah, go beyond the surface level.
Beyond the sound bites.
Right, get past all the partisan bickering and actually try to understand what's really going on.
And that's what we've tried to do today, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We started with these two stories that seemed pretty separate, but as we've talked, it's become clear that they're actually connected in ways we might not have realized at first.
It's all intertwined,
The choices people make about where to live, the struggles businesses are facing, the policies coming out of Washington.
It's all part of the same big picture.
And it's affecting all of us, every single one of us.
Definitely.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? What can you take away from all this?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that we're not just passive observers here,
We're not powerless.
Exactly. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of this country. We need to be informed. We need to be engaged.
We need to hold our leaders accountable.
Absolutely. And we need to remember that we're all in this together,
We're not going to solve these problems by yelling at each other.
Right, or by just giving up.
It's going to take all of us working together to find solutions.
I couldn't agree more. The future of this nation depends on our ability to have honest conversations, even when we disagree.
Even when it's tough.
Yeah, we need to listen to each other, understand different perspectives, and find common ground.
So as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with this: pay attention to what's happening around you.
Yeah, in your community and the world.
Ask questions. Seek out different viewpoints.
Don't be afraid to speak up.
Because the future is in our hands.
Well said. The more we understand about what's happening, the better equipped we are to make a difference.
So true. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep asking those tough questions.